Good evening. I would like to call order to order
I'll be so bad.
this special work study of the city of North Bend for April 8th, 2025. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending, Mayor, Council, and listening public. Tonight's meeting is a culmination of a tremendous amount of work by the city staff on the evaluation of policing services and alternatives. Our alternatives include A, continuing to contract with the city of Snoqualmie, B, contracting with the King County Sheriff's Office, or C, forming a city-owned and operated police department. This is a big deal. We all, the mayor, council, staff, residents, the presenters, and those they represent, all hold public safety as a most important and most basic of public services. In 2024, police services or North Bend accounted for roughly 20% of the city's general fund. Similar services in 2025, as in right now, could account for not 20%, but nearly a third of the city's general fund. That represents a 63% increase in the largest single expense in this city's general fund. So yes, we are taking significant time and expense to do our best to get this right for our community. This is an important milestone in the process leading to a contract for police services going forward. On March 14th, the city issued a request for proposals for policing services. This RFP was posted publicly as well as sent to the city of Snoqualmie and the King County Sheriff's Office. The city did not receive a response from any other police service provider. Tonight's plan, we'll have presentations and then questions and answers by the city of Snoqualmie and the King County Sheriff's Office, and we very much appreciate their taking the time to be with us. As this is a work study, there will be no public comment. As discussed last week at our meeting on April 1st, staff laid out a calendar for council, summarized briefly here April 11th. Written proposals are due April 15th, our next regular city council meeting. Staff will share scoring as outlined in the request for proposal. April 22nd, council will meet again to discuss any clarifying questions and or answer questions and provide direction to staff. At the May 6th regular city council meeting of North Bend, we will meet again to discuss and, if ready, take a vote. A few notes: a video recording and copy of presentations of tonight will be posted on the city's website. There's a police services landing page that's been stood up, and I'd like to bring that to your attention. Written proposals will also be posted on the city's website once they are received. Council will have an opportunity to ask questions, and if needed, council can decide to extend the time we have to ask questions. It should be noted that any additional time granted to our presenters this evening will also be granted to the second presenter. This evening will be moderated by Hillary Evans, partner of Kenyon Disson. I will now turn it over to Hillary, who will introduce herself and set the expectations and ground rules for tonight. Thank you.
My job from me. So we'll start off with the police presentation and then we'll go to questions after, and I expect that the good
I will be the timekeeper and I'll let you know when you have 10 minutes left and then 5 minutes left. All right. And don't start until I can get my clock going. Okay.
All right. So good evening to you, council members, Mayor Miller, North Bend staff, and the North Bend community. My name is Drew Tay, and I am the finance director for the city of Snoqualmie. With me tonight is Gary Haracy, the police captain for the Snoqualmie Police Department. We are proud to present to you tonight our proposal for the provision of police services to the city of North Bend. To begin, our intention is to address each and every section in the city of North Bend's request for proposal, and collectively we will be happy to answer any questions council might have following the presentation. Both Snoqualmie and North Bend, to say the least, have enjoyed a long-standing partnership, which we tonight are striving to maintain. We believe wholeheartedly that the SPD offers a compelling, fully staffed, no call too small patrol service that produces excellent response times within a constructive one-to-one partnership. And we are confident that together we can reach an agreement in the days ahead. This valley is quite literally one incredible community, and it deserves a police department that cares and shares the same values as our exceptional staff does here tonight.
We're going to discuss the organization and proposed services. We are pleased to present our talented, hardworking leadership and patrol teams to the city of North Bend, who will continue their unwavering commitment to both communities. We are currently staffed by long-serving, dedicated professionals mixed with energetic new officers who care deeply about public service. Our department is divided into 6 components. The patrol division responds to emergency and non-emergency calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, while also maintaining a proactive response to our communities. The investigations unit works closely with patrol, other agencies, and prosecutors in cases where detailed examination is needed, such as violent crimes. The school resource officer works in partnership with the Snoqualmie Valley School District to help ensure the safety of our youth and to investigate crimes on school campuses. The police support officer coordinates prisoner transports, court appearances, and is a vital part of our community involvement and events. The mental health professional is a co-responder with patrol, providing help for those in crisis and assisting our communities with valuable resources. The administrative service unit handles case management, public records request, evidence management, and more. Our department is composed of 30 full-time employees with an average tenure of 4.5 years. The department has 25 sworn and 5 civilian positions.
All right, so
Oh, I got
go for
one.
it.
Washington state law requires commissioned personnel to complete 24 hours of training each year. In 2024, our officers averaged 81 hours of training, which is more than 3 times the minimum. This investment in our officers prepares them to effectively serve our communities.
All right, so now we're going to talk about our proposed services. North Bend is truly easy to reach but hard to leave, which we all know here that that's an awesome tagline, but it really truly does capture our commitment and effort tonight towards the partnership. And so SPD is proud to offer North Bend our no call too small service, which is infused into everything we do and inspires our people to provide the best service possible. Everyone and every call matters to SPD. Tonight, we would also like to thank Council for their diligence in assessing their options. The CPSM report is incredibly valuable and contains a wealth of information that has been instrumental to the City of Snoqualmie in shaping its proposal. The charts in this slide are pulled directly from the CPSM report and shows the workload required at particular times during the winter and summer months. As a result of that unique workload profile, the City of Snoqualmie is proposing a minimum sworn officer level of 2 between the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and 1 sworn officer between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. However, given the rule of 60, officer and community safety, and relief factor that CPSM cited as particular points to consider when staffing, it's important to know that the City of Snoqualmie doesn't just intend to offer the minimum required. Fully staffed, as we are currently within our patrol division, SPD would maintain 2 shift schedules during the day and night, equally composed of 2 North Bend officers, 2 Snoqualmie officers, and 1 sergeant that would float between both cities. Integral to this structure and partnership overall is the ability of a Snoqualmie officer to respond to calls in North Bend and vice versa, which provides both cities the added security of additional patrol resources nearby. Furthermore, SPD contains a number of positions such as the administrative sergeant and detective that can serve on patrol if needed, and positions that are designed to keep the officers and sergeants doing what they do best, patrolling the streets. SPD takes service quality and the continuous optimization of operations seriously. Actions taken include the continual deployment of community-based policing practices, the development of key civic and business partnerships, continuous performance evaluation, such as through the recently completed Loaned Executive Management Assistance Program report, otherwise known as the LEMAP report, and an incredible amount of training hours as we discussed earlier. Specifically, the LEMAP report provides a wealth of useful information regarding our procedures and their execution. And as a result, SPD over the next 5 years intends to seek accreditation. The intent of accreditation is to, among other things, increase public's confidence in the agency, intensify administrative and operational effectiveness, strengthen understanding of policies and procedures, improve agency morale and pride, and decrease susceptibility to litigation and costly civil court settlements. To that end, the addition of one administrative specialist shared between Snoqualmie and North Bend, as we have built into the budget, would support the accreditation effort, as well as help with the increasing number of public records requests, the increasing complexity of state and federal crime statistic reporting, and assist with case management, concealed pistol licenses, and court orders.
As we look at our experience, we have been serving the city of North Bend for over 10 years. The department administration continually meets the needs of North Bend through regular communication and updates in management, committee, and council meetings. Notifications are also made to city administration and the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee when concerning issues arise. The department also meets the needs of the community through proactive policing, extra patrols, and participation in community events. We also recognize the concern of retail theft at the outlet mall. In a joint response, the police department, the city of North Bend, and the outlet mall created a substation there to increase visibility and reduce criminal activity. The partnership with the city of North Bend has come with great reward for both cities. We have built relationships with the city, community members, business owners, and our mutual aid partners. We enjoy our community involvement, meeting people, and spending time making the Valley a safe place to live, work, and visit. Due to our exceptional level of service and our belief of no call too small, our satisfaction rating among the North Bend community was 74% in a 2023 survey. This is something we are very proud of, as it is well above the national average of 51%. As we look at our response times for the Snoqualmie Police Department, another thing we are proud of are these times, which are also below the national average. The CPSM study acknowledges, and I'll quote, our good response capabilities. In 2024, the average response time for a motor vehicle collision with injuries was 3.5 minutes. And priority 1 responses averaged just under 4.5 minutes. Available to us are multiple resources. Within our department, we have our own mental health professional and public information officers. For pre-planned events and major investigations, we can call upon mutual aid from the Coalition of Small Police Agencies Major Crimes Task Force, which we are a member. The Washington State Patrol Crime Scene Response Team, King County SWAT, Guardian 1, and Search and Rescue are all part of mutual aid. In addition, we have access to K-9 units from the Port of Seattle, Redmond PD, WSP, and more. For cases where drones are needed, Issaquah, Renton, and Enumclaw Police Department have strong, viable programs that we can call upon for assistance. Over the years, We have utilized our mutual aid responses in critical incidents and events, such as the 2014 natural gas explosion, the Snowfalls Credit Union robbery in 2024, the homicide-suicide investigation in 2024, and the annual events of the Boeing Classic and Festival of Mount Si, which are hosted on the same weekends.
All right, so transitioning to section 5, community council and staff engagement. When it comes to the community, SPD actively maintains a visible presence and upholds steadfastly the principles of community policing. Let's admit it, the police can be scary, which is why we like to attend as many community events as possible. Trust is so incredibly key, but it can only occur when the bonds that connect the police and the community have been cultivated, encouraging those who have been harmed to speak up. And SPD eagerly seeks to build on those bonds that have been constructed over the past decade. When it comes to council and staff, excitingly, the city of Snoqualmie is proud to present the proposed formation of a quarterly joint advisory committee that would be affectionately be called Snowpack. The committee would be made up of an equal number of Snoqualmie and North Bend council members who would discuss and advise on topics such as operations, staffing models, incidents, statistical information, and budgets, all in the advancement of a shared public safety vision. Moreover, the city of Snoqualmie is offering a parallel working group for staff, where North Bend could expect to receive quarterly reports from the police department, finance, and human resources. Next section is cost. The city of Snoqualmie is proposing a price of $3.98 million for 2025 and $4.06 million for 2026, using a formula that would be replicated every 2 years before the start of a new biennium. North Bend would pay for 100% of dedicated personnel, which includes the wages and benefits of 8 officers and 50% of 4 sergeants. In addition, North Bend would pay for a proportion of shared personnel, operational expenditures, and vehicle and equipment costs based on a rolling average of weighted calls for service relative to Snoqualmie. North Bend would also receive a proportional credit for any specific police revenue, such as the amount paid for by the Snoqualmie Valley School District for the provision of 1 school resource officer, and would pay 15% contract administration facilities charge on top of the direct expenses, which is designed to emulate the overhead fees that Eastside Fire Rescue has in contracts with Mercer Island, Woodinville Fire and Rescue, and Duval Fire District number 45. The total fee charged in North Bend can be considered a budget. Because cities must live within their means and construct conservative financial plans, the city of Snoqualmie is proposing a cost reconciliation process at the end of the biennium that would true up the budget to actuals. The goal is to match the payment to the actual cost of providing services. Therefore, if, for example, there's an open position within SPD, then North Bend can expect to receive a credit for the budget unspent. In terms of controlling costs, the city of Snoqualmie actively reviews the cost of cops, cars, and contracts rigorously. For example, the city of Snoqualmie has an excellent fleet program that has the expertise to keep police vehicles on the road longer, past their useful lives, which, considering the tariffs that are now in place, can be incredibly valuable. One way to control cost also is through contractual limitations, and the city of North Bend can expect in our proposed contract the limitation of operational costs to the June to June biennial change in the consumer price index. To wrap up the cost section, using the methodology for calculating the average cost per patrol FTE, including in council's comparative analysis provided at your retreat, the average cost per patrol FTE is $365,000 for 2025 and $373,000 for 2026. But if council is looking for a fully loaded cost per position, spreading the operational expenses, vehicle and equipment costs, and the contract administration facilities charge across all positions allocated to North Bend, then go ahead and please see this slide. Finally, Gary and I are your contacts for this presentation and the RFP proposal, and that goes for council, staff, and the community. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and we will be posting our materials to our website tomorrow and throughout the remainder of the week, so please check them out. And finally, both Snoqualmie and North Bend have enjoyed a long-standing partnership, and it is our desire to maintain and grow that partnership. The two cities are quite frankly better together, not separate. And we believe that SPD offers North Bend the trust, as evident through our response times and the result, taking a service that once had a less than 30% satisfaction rate under the previous KCSO contract to a plus 70% satisfaction rate in little over a decade, all within a fair price. With your help, we are confident that we can reach an agreement in the days ahead that will continue this collective success, not just for both cities, but for one amazing community. So thank you very much for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We will be taking questions from council members, and we are going to go in the order of seniority. I hope that questions and answers, well, you saved us some time. That was only 16 minutes, so very well done. It's my hope that we can still limit the question and answer period to 30 minutes. If you could try and limit questions on your first round to a single question, and answers should be somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes if possible. If we run out of time, we will address it. But let's try and keep it to 30 minutes if at all possible. And by my list, it looks like Councilmember Elwood is first up.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was great. And as you said, you will only have one question in the first round, correct? All right, because I've got pages. Just kidding. First of all, I want to say thank you for the presentation. Thank you for coming with a more detailed offering here. And I want to just be right out the gate, say that from my point of view, our police services that we've been receiving from the department has been fantastic. My questions and concerns don't have anything to do with the quality of service that we've been receiving, rather more on the contractual side of our relationship. So with my first question, thank you, Drew, for being here. We've experienced a considerable deficit in data and access to other information over the last few years, in addition to other friction that I would say. Oftentimes, I feel like our community is at the bad end of that stick. Apart from the advisory committee board, which you've just presented, which I thank you for, because that was another question of mine, how do you plan to change our relationship, or what do you plan to change in our relationship so that we can feel confident that we have a healthy, equitable engagement with one another and move past all of the kind of bad situations that we've had in the past with respect to access to data, with respect to arbitrary cost increases, public records requests, all these other things that have been happening last year that has demonstrated, at least to me, that we're in the foul end of our relationship.
So thank you very much for the question, Councilmember Elwood. I would say that the starting point for this is certainly a joint advisory committee that we have proposed here. And so the goal of the city of Snoqualmie is to take this from a low trust relationship to a high trust relationship and work towards making progress in that direction. And as I've spoken to my council, you can't do that without communication. And so that is why we're proposing that here today, is because we do think that communication is the solution to our problem. Our problems, I think, overall between both cities for the most part. And that's why we're engaged in presenting such a proposal to you as well that would get your voice right into the mix as a part of how we need to address police services across both communities moving forward. And so I'm thankful on behalf of my council that we put that option on the table to the city of North Bend. And as a part of that, we've also included quarterly reports, which we've mentioned to the staff so that they would have year-to-date budget actuals, for example. Human resources would also be reporting as well on vacancies and different things across the positions. But then in addition to that, because it is a joint advisory committee, you would have staff here, for example, reporting to you at that committee level, because we really need a comprehensive conversation together. We can only do this together. It's important for the police chief, for example, or the police captain to be able to direct everyone. And so as a consequence, we're proposing that joint advisory committee. It's made up of an equal number of North Bend members and Snoqualmie members. So there's no separation between the two cities necessarily on that. And that is our proposal. And you'll see that in our contract, in our RFP response.
Thank you. I have other questions, but I'll stick to the protocol.
Hopefully we'll get back around to him. Councilmember Coellen is next.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. It was great. My question is about the chief of police. We've gone through two in my 5-6 years on council. And I guess I'm wondering why that is. And also, what are our next steps? We currently don't have one at the moment. And again, it's a communication thing, and I don't know what's happening.
Well, unfortunately, we can't go into, that's all allowed. Unfortunately, that it is an active investigation and we can't go into details of what's going on with the current situation. What I can say is that the city, as soon as things started in place under this current situation, communicated with the mayor and city administrator to pass that information along to communicate with y'all. And that is part of this, us looking at a new way of communicating with y'all and providing y'all that information. But unfortunately, we can't go into what is currently going on with the current chief.
To add to that question, how long does an investigation take? Because it seems like it's been going on for a bit.
It's dependent on the case. And as soon as the city can provide an update, they will do so. But I can't go into how long it takes. Even criminal investigations for our regular day-to-day calls, one could take 5 minutes, the other could take 2 months. There's no way for us to pin that down. But the city will provide that notification once everything starts rolling in that direction.
Next up is Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you for the presentation. Very much appreciate it. The city's RFP requested a 5-year projection of cost to provide services. I didn't see that in the presentation. So if there are 5 years of cost, that would be great. I was going to ask what your key assumptions and programs are included in the 5-year projection, but maybe you can just start by speaking to if the numbers exist, I guess. Thank you.
So the 5 years will show up in the RFP proposal, but we are proposing something that is actually very similar to the King County Sheriff's Office, in which you would update right for the next 2-year period. I think overall what the cost of the service would be overall. So what we've got here, or what we're going to propose, or what we have proposed as part of our RFP response eventually when we submit that to the city, is that we would be developing a budget for the next 2-year period. Before the start of the next biennium, we would then also develop the new budget. It would include any sort of COLA increases or things as a part of that overall. Talked a little bit about the operational expenses as well. But all this fits into a formula, and we would be applying the formula to the next biennium. And so North Bend would have that information prior to the start of your budget process. In addition, we would be presenting that to the Joint Advisory Committee as well, too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tremolata.
Yeah, thank you. I think my question is on the same track as Councilmember Elwood. There's a elephant in the room that I want to address, and it's from February 26th. We received a cease and desist regarding this process from the city of Snoqualmie. By you presenting tonight, are you still in belief that we are in breach of our renewal contract in January per that email that was sent to our city, or can we assume that that's rescinded by your participation?
Well, I think without my legal counsel up here, I don't think I can necessarily answer that question. But we can probably get a response back to you at some point.
Maybe in the written response, that'd be good.
And are we technically able to get Councilmember Ristic to participate?
I am on the call, and yes, I would like to be able to participate.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you for the presentation. And I appreciate the partnership that we have with the Snoqualmie Police Department. As the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee, I work with them fairly closely and been very satisfied with that. So my question is around the costs. The cost for service from 2024 to what you're showing for 2025 is approximately an increase of $1.4 million, give or take. Can you talk about the reasons behind that significant cost increase?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Councilmember. So often I think what we're probably hearing is how do we come up with the estimate? And really our starting position was the Interlocal Cooperation Act, which states that under state law, one governmental entity may contract to provide services to another governmental entity, but the provider entity must be paid the true and full value of those services such that it incurs neither a profit nor a loss. And so we made sure to capture the true and full value of providing those services using just normal budgeting practices to assign those costs to come up with an estimate. No different from what King County would do. Secondly, we've asked ourselves, well, if this is our estimate, then is there a difference between the fee received over the past 5 years between 2020 and 2024 and the true and full value of providing those services? And the answer was yes. Our analysis revealed that on average, Snoqualmie paid approximately $910,000 more annually to provide police services to North Bend than it collected in a fee from North Bend, which roughly equaled a $4.5 million discount to North Bend in the provision of police services. From our analysis and the application of those normal budgeting practices, it has become increasingly clear to the finance department at the city of Snoqualmie that the contract was underpriced, maybe through the exclusion of certain cost categories in exchange for having the contract, potentially because there was some hesitation from North Bend at the time regarding an unproven partnership and policing model. And now, 10 years later, 10 years that North Bend has had to thoroughly examine the proof of concept, where the success of the model has been demonstrated, we are simply asking for fair compensation, which will likely be, by the way, corroborated by the price of the King County offer, potentially, and has been corroborated by the annual operating costs required if North Bend were to establish their own police department.
Councilmember Torgerson.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the whole area appreciates the police staff. I mean, we love our police officers. The issues we're having actually is a Snoqualmie administration and in communication, as you stated earlier. And as that result, that's why we're here. I mean, if we could have negotiated something last year, we might not be here, just so you know. So my first question, because I have many, given North Bend's projected revenue shortfalls in the next 2 years and the absence of a clearly defined strategy to increase revenue, how would your agency structure or allow for flexibility in the contract to ensure that the costs can be adjusted if actual revenue falls short of projections? And what I mean by that is, are there any built-in mechanisms for service level adjustments, any sort of phased implementation, or mid-contract renegotiation options that would prevent drastic citywide cuts in other North Bend departments to maintain police services? And in addition to that, can the contract include any sort of hard annual cost ceilings to help City of North Bend manage its budget more predictably and avoid any unanticipated cost escalations from year to year?
So I'll try to take that one on. What I'll say to that is, to a degree, would we entertain that? The answer is our council potentially could, but we have not received a counter proposal from North Bend in over 6 months. at this point. And so consequently, we'd be happy to take something back to our council to share that with them. But it's really up to North Bend to really develop what that contract looks like or what that counter proposal looks like and provide that to us. At this point, we have provided North Bend with 3 offers in which we've only received 1 counter proposal back in October that potentially did not really take our interests very much into consideration. And so consequently, we'd be happy to receive a counter proposal to share that with our council. And so if that's something that North Bend would want to prepare, then we'd be happy to listen.
And last in line, but not least, Mayor Miller.
Very kind of you. Thank you, Hillary. Everybody in the room, thank you for coming, for joining us. Thank you, gentlemen in front of us, for your presentation tonight. Most appreciate it. Once again, the term or the word communication has arisen quite a bit. So I'm going to speak to Gary, if you don't mind. Here's my question for you. Communication is extremely important, and we're going to do our part, by the way, as City of North Bend. Just want you to know. My question to Gary is, can you explain or speak to the importance of building relationships such as one that you might have with Snoqualmie Casino specifically? Can you give us some examples of how that relationship has transpired over the last 10 years?
So one of the things that we like to do is be open. I'll start with just my communication with the city. I stated it earlier. I communicate with city administration. I communicate with the Public Safety Committee, and I communicate to council. It is something new that we started here several months ago, to where I am presenting the monthly reports here. We participate in events and are constantly in communication with each person here at the city. When we look at outside entities, whether it's the Snoqualmie Casino or Issaquah PD or the city of Issaquah, we do the same thing. We're constantly in communication, working with their police department that they are forming, to make sure that we're working cohesively together and presenting a mutual relationship forward. Is it perfect? No relationship's perfect. I'm not going to put any false pretenses out there. We are always working towards making a better relationship. So with that said, our communication, I will be, before the chief of the Snoqualmie Tribe Police Department departed 2 weeks ago, we were set to have coffee. Those are the things that we do to communicate, where we get together, we talk about the mutual issues at hand, and come up with ways to address those. I don't see that changing anytime soon with them or Issaquah, Duval, our city staff for both Snoqualmie or North Bend. They are our mutual partners. So that's one of the things that I like to do. That's one of the things we will continue to do, is keep that open line of communication with not only the city here, city of Snoqualmie, but the tribe as well.
Thank you very much.
Start back up at the top. It's been 16 minutes, so everybody will probably
Look at that. Awesome. Kind of piggybacking on Councilmember Colin's comments about chief decisions. The city of Snoqualmie on 3 separate occasions has made dramatic decisions about our shared police chief. And I understand you can't speak to any specifics about what's currently happening. But the optics regarding that, and what seems to be a lot of staff turnover within the city of Snoqualmie administration, leads me to be more concerned about how can we have better oversight into how our residents are policed. It doesn't make sense to me that the Snoqualmie's mayor can make decisions that impact residents of North Bend without us being involved, or at least having a seat at the table. What new policies and protocols would you implement to ensure North Bend leaders are deciding the fate of North Bend residents, including financial decisions? I understand the advisory committee is one step in that direction, but how about a seat at the table when it comes to hiring, firing, and other key decisions that are being made within the city, the police force leadership, as well as the police force financial decisions that could impact the city of North Bend?
Well, I certainly think that there's some legal doctrines in play that would have a consequence as to whether we can actually incorporate North Bend into the decision-making process overall that we have to be mindful of. In addition to that, we own all the liability as the city of Snoqualmie. That is 100% on us overall, and it would be maintained in what we're proposing to North Bend here. So certainly our goal is to potentially minimize the risk that could potentially come from that overall that would put our money at risk at the city of Snoqualmie. And so consequently, there needs to be trust that is built between both parties, agencies over that. And so in essence, right now, what we've got in this contract is a proposed joint advisory committee itself. But in terms of the ability to make decisions over the hiring and firing of the police chief, under this contract, as we've proposed here and have not received a counterproposal, that would reside with the city of Snoqualmie and the Snoqualmie mayor. Now, if North Bend wants to propose something different to the city of Snoqualmie, as I mentioned previously, we will entertain those options. But once again, the liability lives with us at this stage. So if we get it wrong, it's not on North Bend, it's on us. And we take great pains to make sure that we're very careful around this because these are delicate and sensitive decisions that are getting made. I can guarantee you that both our council and the mayor explore every single angle possible to make sure that they're making the right decision. And so that may not be the answer that you necessarily want to hear, but given the contractual relationship, the arrangements that we have currently right now, in addition to a proposed contract that we've got on the table, that is the best we could potentially do.
I appreciate that. And I understand the liability. I still am struggling with the fact that behind closed doors, decisions are made that will impact North Bend residents, and we don't even have a seat at the table to know what's going on or even how to have influence over that if it is in fact something that's dealing with our citizens. So thank you for the answer.
Councilmember Coellen.
Mine is more of an operational question. When you're talking about proposed services, you say 2 officers would be in North Bend from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But does that mean 1 officer in North Bend and 1 float officer out and about if needed?
So currently with our full staffing, the proposal is for 2 officers in North Bend, 2 officers in Snoqualmie, and a floating sergeant. So there will be 2 designated for each city. That provides optimal response to domestic violence calls, any violence calls, motor vehicle collisions with injuries where you may have to be tending to those injuries, the vehicles or traffic flow, things like that. So right now we are proposing that it is 2, 2, and 1. And the sergeant will be floating between the 2 to provide supervision over over the 4 officers.
But this is a proposed service, so it's not in stone yet.
That is our current staffing.
Okay. If we had 2 officers, would they be able to patrol more, where they'd be more visible, where the citizens of North Bend could see them out and about being officers?
So when our officers are in either city, they are mobile. They are driving around. They might stop in at the substation over at the outlet mall to write a report, make a contact. You know, when they're not responding to a call, the officers are continually mobile. So yes, you would have that visibility. Recently at Public Health and Safety, we even presented a letter from a community member who thanked us for being visible in their subdivision, especially in light of some of the incidents that occurred earlier this year and around Christmas with the burglaries and things like that. So our model is to provide 2 in each city so that they are continually mobile.
Thank you.
We're at 22 minutes. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. You mentioned the possibility of North Bend providing a counter proposal, and that prompts a question. The number that I'm familiar with was the letter of August, and it felt like a bill. The letter of August 29th for 4,048,000. I don't know if that was vetted by council. Tonight, you've come forward, I believe, with 3,980,000. I wonder if that's been vetted by council, but my question then would be at what point is the threshold that something would need to be vetted by the Snoqualmie City Council, and what has been vetted to date? Thank you.
So all the materials presented today were vetted yesterday in a special city council meeting, and we have been having multiple special council meetings basically to review the materials. And so everything that you see here has the full force and weight of our 7 members of our city council behind this number that we've presented. So.
Councilmember Tremolata.
Yeah, I'll once again follow Councilmember Elwood on more focus on the contract. Drew, you mentioned trust. I think that's the key for some of us here on council, transparency and trust, and we feel like there's probably very little of that. In January, there was a public records request that turned up tens of thousands of records. Our attorney requested that you narrow it. It was declined. It's taken up time and money from our staff. We've asked for executive sessions to be filled in on various topics about the contract. They were declined. How do we build trust? What in this proposal builds trust? What is your proposal for building trust back up?
Well, I think what we put on the table is a joint advisory committee to North Bend City Council. In addition, there's also a technical working group as well as a part of this proposal. These are things that we don't currently have right now that are in place. And as a consequence of that, we believe that it's important for us to start having those conversations between council. The administration as well have been having regular meetings with each other. So both Mayor Miller and Mayor Ross have been meeting regularly to discuss the multitude of issues between both cities overall. So what we've put on the table right now is a joint advisory committee quarterly that is composed of equal number of North Bend and Snoqualmie council members that would discuss some of the issues that we're potentially dealing with. And over time, I would assume that trust would be built back up as a potential consequence of that work that we're doing. Also, there would be more of an opportunity, right, for staff from Snoqualmie to address North Bend council members and vice versa as well. This is a two-way partnership and not just one necessarily either. And so as a part of this, we would also request information for North End that could be critical as well to our provision of police services too. And so hopefully North Bend would be prepared to take the step with us in that direction. It's a starting point potentially. There could be evolution, right, that happens beyond that. But that will have to take place potentially between the council members, and we have to start somewhere. This is a starting place.
And just to be clear, the advisory committee is not a decision-making, at least as proposed.
It is not a decision-making body.
Yeah.
Correct. So there's no legislative authority assigned to that committee. Once again, there's legal doctrine that kind of prevents us from offering anything more necessarily than that. We can't deputize you as a part of the city of Snoqualmie because you don't necessarily live within the city limits, for example. But, that is what we could propose at this time right now. And we're hoping that North Bend appreciates that.
Thanks.
Councilmember Rustick.
Yeah, thank you. Understanding that this decision is not just for today or tomorrow, but, for our future as well. What do you see are some of the key challenges in North Bend today? And how about over the course of the next 5 years? Do you have any significant thoughts there?
Councilmember Rustick, thank you. So I think overall there's issues or concerns that are across the board, not only for North Bend, but for Snoqualmie and every other jurisdiction in the state. Some of those are growth. Some of those are funding through, through whatever means, whether it's housing developments and things like that, we're all facing the same thing. When we look at the law enforcement side, there's also the changes of law. One of the things that is huge for us that we see is the number of public records requests that come through. My staff handles over 500 annually, and that is a huge lift. One public records request, as Councilmember Tremolato stated a little bit ago, could have thousands of documents to it. So that is one of the reasons we're asking for that additional records person to help mitigate some of those issues. As far as the public safety, we have road construction going on, increased collisions. I mean, I came into work yesterday and there was a car flipped over on its side under I-90. Those things are affecting all of us. It's backing traffic up, things like that. That is one of the reasons we're proposing the number of staff that we are, of having 2 officers in each city plus the sergeant. It allows us to increase our surge capacity for one city or the other. So if something major happened over here and I needed to pull those extra 2 officers out of North Bend, I would have 5 people here, and vice versa, because we are one community, but 2 cities. And so those are the things that kind of we are faced with, along with the typical crime and the increase in crime and things like that, which I think the outlet mall was a good example of us addressing that. Our theft rate has decreased by over 1/3 in the last 9 months by just us putting a facility there and about increasing our presence there for officers writing reports or contacts. So those are the things that we kind of face, and some of the ways we look at addressing those over the next 5 years.
We're at 29 and a half minutes. I'd suggest that we complete this round of questions, extend slightly past 30 minutes, if that's okay with everyone. All right, Councilmember Torgerson.
Yes, thanks. I'm looking at the fee formula that you have here, and I'm wondering about operational costs. I'm wondering about the flat fee charge. I'm not exactly sure, the 15% charge. I mean, would you still have those employees in those departments if you didn't have an agreement with us, or would you have to cut back? I mean, would you still have those employees and all of that? Also, the facilities charge, I'm not sure what we'd be charged for there. I mean, if you're remodeling or any sort of capital improvements, that's something that stays with the city of Snoqualmie. That's not something that we should be paying for. And so I'm just trying to figure out the formula here. I'm looking at B is personnel costs. We got operational costs, which I don't know what that is. And then you got you've got 2 personnel costs. And then below that is calls for service percentages. And it looks like, I don't know if that's a percentage of something or other. Is that used for something, or is there a dollar amount attached to that? I'm not figuring that out. And then below, another thing I'm confused about is the total fee police full-time, then patrol, and then officer, which I think those are all the same thing, but I'm not sure. And I'm not sure, are you adding those all together, or are you putting, where does that go in your formula?
So we've tried to, list them out by letters, basically. And so consequently, there's formulas kind of assigned to that, so you can kind of find your way through it for the most part. In terms of the different cost categories, personnel costs, those are the salaries, wages, benefits, any sort of personnel expenses assigned to the people themselves, for example. The operational costs include all supplies and services necessary in order to carry out the work of the police department. The vehicle and equipment costs that you have there include the police vehicles that the police department would be driving, in addition to the repair, maintenance, tires, insurance, all that associated with those vehicles. The revenues, as I mentioned, as a part of the presentation overall, North Bend would be receiving a credit for that. So that's for any SPD specific revenues that are generated that are not tied to North Bend or Snoqualmie, but that's the work that they're doing to get those revenues in the door. And we believe that North Bend should receive a share of that. Those shared costs that you have in that, B, C, D, and E, would be multiplied by a calls for service percentage. So over the course of 2 years, 23, 24, North Bend equaled roughly 44.42% of the total weighted calls for service for those 2 years. And so this would be a rolling average that would be updated before the start of every biennium. When you take that call for service percentage and you multiply it by the shared costs, you get a total shared cost amount that you would then add to your dedicated cost amount as well. And then on top of that, you would be multiplying the 15% contract administration and facilities charge to that. And that is for our overhead expenses that we have to carry. It's a flat 15% charge. It's designed to emulate what North Bend currently has through Eastside Fire Rescue, with Mercer Island, Woodinville Fire Rescue, and Duval Fire District number 45. So it's not unusual, I think, to North Bend to incorporate that into there. And really the goal of that contract administration facilities charge is to cover our admin expenses. So for example, a lot of the work that we do includes recruitment. We have an HR team that is there to help recruit police officers to get them in the door at the city of Snoqualmie. That is incredibly valuable, especially in light of the pandemic that we all survived, as well as the general, what will you call it? The pain, I would say, that the police force has been under over the past 5 years as well. There's been dramatic changes to the police department or the police force in general. And so consequently, recruitment is so incredibly key to being able to get police officers in the door so that you're not having to spend money, for example, on bonuses or things like that, in which we have not had to do that overall as a city, which has been an extremely benefit to both North Bend and Snoqualmie. For finance, for example, so payroll, AP, all the work that we do to provide services on behalf of the police department is critical to that. The insurance and the leadership over that. In terms of facilities, we provide a police station that includes office space for staff, interview rooms, safe storage for evidence, holding cells for detainees, and training rooms that include a fully equipped gun range too. So for any training needs that they have, there's a facility that's available to that. And those fees would help to maintain that facility, keep it up and running, making sure that we need to do what we do. So
what my question is if we didn't go with you, would you still keep those employees? Would you still have that police station or?
So we would still have the police station. We would not be keeping the North Bend proportion of those positions. So currently North Bend is funding 12.24 FTEs in total. Those are positions that would probably be eliminated.
So you would eliminate someone from payroll and accounts payable?
So we do have our admin and finance expenses, for example. Those are step costs. If the workload activity decreases as a result, then we don't need to carry the FTEs necessarily. So potentially the answer is yes. And indeed, over the past, since the start of this contract, we have frozen, or at least the conversation around it, we have frozen positions at the city in case that ever eventuated. So.
Okay. Guess that's good.
Right. And last up, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Well, my second question was already answered, so thank you for that. So I'm going to ask about going back to snowpack. Love the title, by the way, and building that trust, that extremely important trust. I consider us sister cities anyway, even if we weren't to go this direction per se, we still have to build relationship. With that being said, would you be, I think you said quarterly meetings potentially, is that correct? Did I hear that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay, would you be open to maybe monthly? Because I think our monthly meetings are actually activating a lot of positivity. So that's my question right now. Very simple, I hope.
So thank you for the question, Mayor Miller.
You bet.
So to answer that, we would probably have to take that under advisement and back to our council for consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah. Probably the easiest answer. No. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that was 37 minutes worth of questions, and I assume that is enough.
So at this time, I'm going to make a brief note. I hope that Snoqualmie City Council noticed the North Bend City Council meeting this evening. There's quite a number of them in attendance, and I very much appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to excuse the presenters from Snoqualmie, thank them for their time, putting up with their questions. I believe that if council had clarifying questions, those could get sent through our city administrator and forward on to you if that's appropriate. I appreciate your providing your presentations, and as was noted, those and the written responses will be on our website. It sounds like they will be on your own. I have a brief procedural note, which is that we as a council skipped roll call this evening, and I'm going to take a moment at this point in time if there's someone willing to call the roll. Jennifer?
Councilmember Elwood.
Present.
Councilmember Gothelf is excused. Mayor Pro Tem Jocelyn.
Present.
Councilmember Colon.
Here.
Councilmember Rustick.
Present.
Councilmember Torgerson.
Here.
Councilmember Tremolata.
Present.
And with that, we will take a 10-minute break until 12 minutes after 7. Thank you all.
Can I add to the record that I'm here as well? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. The recording is back in progress as the rain starts, so we're competing with that yet again. For the second presentation this evening, we are so pleased to have with us members of the King County Sheriff's Office, including Sheriff Tyndall. And I will turn it over to the sheriff at this point in time to go through the rest of the introductions. Thank you.
And I'm the moderator, Hillary. I'll give you 10 minutes left and 5 minutes left. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak with you. I'm going to introduce the team. King County Sheriff Patty Cole-Tyndall. To my right is Chief Joel Kang. He is our Chief of Community Programs and Services. Next to him is Major Mark Konoski. He is our Precinct 2 Commander. Then at the end, we have Captain Tim Meyer, and he is our captain in our Community Programs and Services Division. And here to my left is Eva Cuneo, and she is Program Manager for the same division. So again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to meet with you and express how important it would be to us to be your police partner once again. As you know, North Bend was our first contract that the King County Sheriff's Office had in 1973. We're grateful to come back to you tonight to demonstrate how we would serve and protect your community a second time. I'm certain of the people here in North Bend want to feel safe where they live, and they want the utmost confidence in their police officers. I can assure you that we want that as well. As one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the country, as well as the state, and we are a contract police partner to many contract cities here in the county, we are uniquely qualified to bring our high quality brand to policing to you here in North Bend. So let me tell you why. Our veteran leadership team, with more than a century of experience among them, have all served at a municipal level in some capacity. They understand what it takes to be an outstanding police partner and have pledged support and engagement with your city. Our services to you would include exceptional 911 dispatch center, world-class air support and SWAT units, expert major crimes detectives, one of the most revered canine units in the United States, and an outstanding crisis negotiation team, just to name a few. Additionally, we would provide an excellent group of crime analysts and professional staff who are amongst the best in the business. Please know we acknowledge and appreciate the significance of this financial investment. Our proposed policing model is tailored to serve your thriving community while ensuring cost efficiencies and value. We recognize and understand no two cities are the same. The needs of North Bend are unique to the people who call this area home. And you have our promise of delivering services that they deserve. Relationships mean everything in our line of work. If we are fortunate to again become your police agency of choice, you have my personal word. We will build and foster the trust with your community. And we have done, as we have done and continue to do across the rest of the cities that we currently serve. On behalf of the King County Sheriff's Office, I thank you for the consideration of putting your confidence in us and entrusting our deputies and other professionals to be part of your daily lives. Turn it over to Chief King.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff, and those in attendance. Joel Kang, Community Programs Services Division Chief. This presentation is specifically built around addressing the 6 items that were requested in the police services RFP that was sent out. And so this is going to be the context in which we're going to provide the information. And if time pending at the end, we'll have some additional information to provide you. So the first item with regards to description of the entity and the proposed services. So on the screen, you'll see the division organizations of the Sheriff's Office. So there are actually 5 functional divisions that were broken out into, and the internal investigations and professional standards actually falls directly under the undersheriff, but the other 5 divisions are commanded by one of the division chiefs. With regards to tenure of the leadership team and all the commission staff and deputies, so all leadership on average is almost 20 years of experience. So that's your sergeants, captains, majors, chiefs, all the way up to the sheriff is 19.5 years in tenure. Your deputies have 8.3 years average tenure commission time, and then the average for the entire organization as a whole is about 12 years for time and grade, which in today's law enforcement timeframe with the generational turnover that every agency is facing, a lot of your line staff, patrol staff are usually probably about a 3 to 4 year range time and grade that you'll see. And I've also personally experienced in a previous agency that I led. And with regards to our reach, our agency is all across the county. We'll go into more specific numbers, but on that map there, you'll just see a highlight of 18 different storefront areas that have public interaction portals for our staff and our contract partners to be able to engage and work with the community with their needs regarding the policing services. So on the proposed services, this was built, and this is a 12-person model built to specifically address the primary request to have a 2.0 officer presence during the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., in addition to addressing a primary operational and workload need of having an investigative support through a full-time detective to address the concerns and the statistics involved relating to property crime, commercial, both residential property crime, to have a dedicated detective to work with that investigation piece, and also to work in a hybrid capacity in the storefront as well. And so before I hand it over to Major Konoski to talk about the breakout of the agency model, to note is, as this is its own standalone contract, you will have the opportunity to select your contract chief. And so that contract chief is selected through a pool of eligible applicants in the organization. And ultimately that process for you, the city, to select your contract chief is up to your preference on how you'd like that done. And you're the ones that make the decision on who that individual is going to be to represent the law enforcement services for the city. And in turn, that contract chief, in consultation with the leadership with the city, will then select from all eligible applicants those who want to be dedicated deputies and the detective who work specifically for the city of North Bend, driving North Bend branded vehicles, wearing North Bend branded uniforms. And so there is ownership with regards to the entire agency itself and the police services that's delivered. So it is very clear that they are North Bend deputies, detectives, and the chief that work form with the city in partnership with the sheriff's office. And I'll turn it over to Major Konoski.
And in conjunction with what Chief King said, we also, when people volunteer to come to one of our contract cities, we have an expectation that they commit for a minimum of 2 years to have continuity, and by and large, most stay much longer. That's been our experience. What you'll see with if you get back up one slide, please. There's a patrol staffing model right there, and we use a squad system. So each squad has different days off. That's the best way to look at it. And with these two squads, one squad is working the same days at different hours, depending on what shift they're assigned, and the other squad is off. And so it just flip-flops like that. As you see in this 12-person model, there is a time gap from midnight to 0600, just based on this modeling. That would be one officer. With that being said, we have surrounding unincorporated cars that are always available. With that, back to what the chief talked about, that would be something that I would encourage be data-driven to figure out when is it the best for calls for service, but then also for the other needs of the city as well. And that's something that once your chief is selected, that work with the city and figure out what is that best. This is a pretty good setup as it is, but there's always room for tweaking. So my office as the precinct commander is based out of Sammamish. We're in the upstairs of Sammamish. And so to give you an idea, the North Precinct, it's 742 square miles. We cover both the passes, Snoqualmie and Skykomish. We have the town of, contract-wise, within that umbrella, we have Skykomish, Carnation, Woodinville, and Sammamish. So we have that plus about a service population of 77,000 plus or minus in the unincorporated areas surrounding and out towards North Bend. We provide police services around the city right now. When it comes to support, there is a chain of command. So if you look at it two ways, the day-to-day of your chief of police and your officers are the city and follows the direction of the city. Within the sheriff's office, since the sheriff's office employees, for lack of a better term, there's a chain of command. I have 3 captains and myself within the sheriff's office structure. So that command structure is also portable. We will go out to wherever the need is. So for example, we may have a critical incident and maybe near or in Sammamish, and say my chief of police there is getting too many tasks or whatever. We chip in and we help. I'll go out, another captain will go out or whatever. So there's some built-in support for major incidents or things of that nature. We also have an administrative specialist at the precinct there that can do fingerprinting, CPLs, some basic admin stuff that we can provide as well. So there's a little built-in support for the officers working in North Bend outside of what the city provides.
Okay. So as you can see from this graphic, there are a lot of agencies that partner with the sheriff's office directly or through contracts. And so there are 12 cities that currently have police services contracted with us, 2 transit agencies, Metro and Sound Transit, 1 tribe with the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, and then the King County International Airport. So we have 16 active contracts with 16 jurisdictions. And as mentioned before, serving cities, and we were started in the contract business starting in 1973. And kind of going over some additional statistics, 30% of all the cities within King County are actually serviced through service contracts with the King County Sheriff's Office. Of the 2.2 million population in King County, 550,000 of that are serviced and provided, police services are provided by the King County Sheriff's Office, totaling $151 million, which is the annual value of all of our police services contract. And as Sheriff previously mentioned, in 1973, when we started the contracting business, that contract was with the city of North Bend.
So that service often begins with that 911 call that's answered up at our regional communications center that's co-located in the Renton Highlands with our Office of Emergency Management. This gives you just a snapshot of the volume of work that's done. About 614,000 calls on average a year. That's everything from a 911 call to a text for service. 69 communication specialists including one that we featured here, Kim Tyson. She's one of the professionals that's handling both emergency and non-emergency calls. I'm very proud of the work that's been done up there. Just under 91% of the 911 calls are answered within 15 seconds, which satisfies the NENA standard. So this is where it starts, that 911 call, again, answered up there and then broadcast over our North Air, where it's then served here in North Bend and up at the precinct, Major Konoski commands.
I would like to add to the communication center. Recently, as an example, City of Carnation, you see items listed in the contract like communications. What is that? I actually took staff to our communication center. They were able to plug in, they were able to talk to the managers and see what you're actually getting for what's in the contract. All right, so 2 exemplars to give you an idea of response to calls for service. So on the left, I believe is Kenmore, and on the right is Woodinville, just as 2 examples. If you look under the column titled priority, that's internal to the sheriff's office and how we prioritize 911 calls for service. So priority X is critical. That's usually a felony in progress crime of violence with weapons involved. So people drop what they're doing, the deputies, and they go expeditiously. Priority 1 is similar with less weapons involvement, but there is a potential threat to someone's personal safety. And then 1, it's an in progress type event, but not so much life threatening or risk of injury. Priority 2, hey, it's not a crisis. We don't have to go lights and siren, but you should just go now. And then 3 is routine, just like it says. We have a lot of calls that no one's in danger, nothing's in progress, things like that. So under the year columns, you'll get an idea of per minute, by minutes, how quickly we get to those types of call. We used Woodinville in particular because of the retail-centric nature and the business and the draw, much like North Bend is, for pass-through plus recreation plus retail and all the tourism that comes with it. Okay, on this just gives you an idea of the underlying theme spread throughout the entire sheriff's office when it comes to large incident management. At the deputy level or officer level, everyone has to be ICS 100, first level supervisor 200, captains 300, and folks like myself and above have to be 400 level ICS certified. We regularly handle large incidents, and we have the ability to draw resources from throughout the department for those incidents.
On this slide, there we go. On this slide, what these boxes entail are all of the services that are either included, which are all the blue boxes that are already included in the cost model, or they're included at no additional cost for all of our contract partners. And then the green are the regional assets that aren't charged to any other law enforcement agency that's out there. And then the red is the elective services that cities contracts can either opt in or opt out of. And so what I want to highlight is that, there's a lot of discussion about mutual aid. Mutual aid doesn't come at a cost for agencies if you already have a like service. So if a jurisdiction has a TAC unit, SWAT team, if they have a special assault unit, major crimes unit, K9, then other agencies wouldn't charge you for responses to your jurisdiction if you have that like service. If you don't, then they have the ability to invoice you for every time that they come out and provide you those services. So in small jurisdictions, usually a patrol response is going to be your most common mutual aid response that you're going to get without any additional cost. So that's why it's important to note that all of those in the blue category don't come at you without any additional cost beyond what's already included in the cost exhibit, which we'll cover in a little bit here.
In regards to some of these units, I've either been a member or in charge of multiple units here. The major crimes unit, murders, attempted murders, and robberies with weapons involved. They can specialize in that. The special assault unit deals with sex crimes and crimes against children, and we have a dedicated group there. TAC 30 SWAT, like I said previously, we look at it as it really means sit, wait, and talk, because unlike the movies, we don't go busting in kind of thing. Pardon my slang, but we actually try to do the lowest possible level of anything. And that's why whenever our SWAT team goes out, we take our crisis negotiation team, and 9 times out of 10, we're talking people out, and it's not sensational. It's, in fact, it's quite boring. But when our attack team does have a crisis event where they do have to leverage all of their capabilities, they are frankly on the cutting edge of what is advocating practice throughout tactical teams throughout the country. They're very capable. Crime analysis unit, my partner, Captain Meyer, will cover that later. This is an extremely powerful resource that we have for data-driven information. And then so on. I could talk your ear off, but I've also been in charge of the Regional Intelligence Group, which is tied into the Joint Terrorism Task Force and our Fusion Center to share information nationwide and on a rare occasion internationally. One I'd like to highlight, and I would like the chief to also chime in here. The Therapeutic Response Unit is made up of mental health professionals that we are actually growing at this time.
That's our co-response unit, which consists of our mental health professionals that will actually respond with deputies to calls out in the field, in addition to doing the follow-up work to help get support and a long-term solution for some chronic issues and that every jurisdiction is dealing with regards to folks that have mental health, substance abuse issues. So it is a very needed resource that everyone across the region is looking for. And so our therapeutic response unit is looking at being regional for all of our unincorporated service areas, in addition to providing that service at no additional cost for all of our contract partners as well.
So relevant to this particular region, as examples, some of the large events that the Sheriff's Office has been involved in. We have the bunker that was up on the hillside. Our tactical unit and our air unit were key players in resolving that, until its conclusion. And that took quite a few resources, including coordination with Seattle PD to have relief up on the mountainside. Also, more recently, out by the Fire Academy, the State Fire Academy, just outside of town, we had a shooting call. Deputies went, and one of our deputies surmised that something was not adding up, and was able to get a search warrant for one of multiple large RVs out there, and it turned into fentanyl production lab slash automatic weapons and a wide variety of other illegal activity occurring. It turned out to be a multi-agency, multi-day response to clean it up, catalog it, and more recently, the suspects in that are getting federal time right now. They've been convicted and they're away for quite some time. Last thing, and I know this is still somewhat fresh, is the Lake Alice incident. We were the agency that handled that incident, and the response at all levels, from command down to detectives to initial response, coordination with fire, all the things, that was us. And on top of that, of particular note, one of the North Precinct captains, BJ Meyer, he's the chief of Woodinville, organized the start of a community healing process where he coordinated key people in the Lake Alice neighborhood and did a very small event there where we brought in faith leaders. The sheriff was there to speak. We brought in mental health professionals, and just that community attended. No media, no nothing, to help them start the process of understanding. And then he also organized at SVA, Snoqualmie Valley Alliance, I believe it is, a larger community-wide event, similar kind of resources, but more. And so we're really a start to finish agency, and we really do care.
Thank you. As we mentioned in some previous slides, our crime analysis unit is a big part of our ability to provide our contract partners real-time open data dashboards. The organization's made a big investment in that. I'll go through these next slides somewhat quickly, but you can see what a dashboard looks like and its ability to provide real-time data on what is happening in our precincts and our contract cities. Move on to the next slide. And this is an example from our North Precinct, so the area that would serve and support North Bend. This was taken as we prepared these slides just a few days ago. You can get an idea of, if you look there on the right, of active calls, from a business check to a residential alarm, a traffic stop. This provides insights that both inform the public, but also can help city chiefs and others make deployment and other decisions. The investments certainly in these tools and IT platforms has been great, but I think really gives us some good insights. More, as we look here, we can see very visual, very map-driven, and the ability, as we look there on the right, to see offenses, everything from fraud and larceny to homicides, and be able to really paint a vivid data-driven framework for what's happening in your communities, help inform how we're, again, making deployment decisions, what crimes are happening. As we look at the resources that we touched on in previous pages, from our set units, investigative units, how do we deploy those and respond to these areas? And again, just a sample of what's out there. Turn to my colleague here.
Yeah, in addition to those dashboards that Captain Meyer talked about, we will also provide annually a comprehensive police service report. So our contracting unit works with our crime analysis unit to compile all the crime statistics for your city. We'll deliver that to the chief. Of course, we have the chief's input, and your chief and city manager typically will determine how best to deliver that to the city.
And on the next slide, for community engagement, as the namesake of my division states, the Sheriff's Office has a lot of resources, dedication, and commitment to community engagement through community programs. And so there are large-scale enterprise-level community engagement programs, such as your National Night Out, Shop with a Cop type programs. And there are hyper-focused local community engagement programs that can be tailored for the local jurisdictions. Usually the contract chiefs will coordinate all of that, in addition to getting support from, as I call it, the mothership in downtown, in assisting with any additional logistical communication support, ensuring success for those local events as some examples that you see up there. And then for the sake of time, I want to make sure to cover this last piece here, which is the cost book. And this is going to be the estimated cost of the police services for that 12 officer model that is listed there for you. As a quick review, when you see the staff numbers up there, that's the fully loaded costs, not just salary and benefits, but it includes all the costs associated with equipping, the vehicle costs as well. That's all incorporated and smoothed out through our King County fleet. And then all of the pool costs of the precinct command support, in addition to the ancillary and pool shared costs of all of your specialty units. To think of the pool costs, think of REI as a co-op. That's how all the contract agencies that partner together with the Sheriff's Office decrease the costs of the pool costs, because it's the actual cost of delivering that service, and that's shared amongst all the agencies that are partnering with the Sheriff's Office to decrease the overall cost. And that cost is determined by workload on the number of times that you utilize that service out there. And so those are the estimated costs right there. The actuals that we know is our cost for 2025. That's why you see that number right there, 4.1 million. So if you were a contract agency with the Sheriff's Office right now, that would be your total contract cost for delivery of police services as of right now. You'll see two columns following along there on the left and right. You have a 1.04 and 1.06. What that is an estimate of the cost inflators for each subsequent year all the way to 2030. And on average, we estimate about a 4 to 6% cost increase year over year for police services costs. And that's really based on labor rates and central services costs, which is all the other support that goes in the back end to provide the services on the front end, the pointy end of the law enforcement side. That's the visible end there. The one anomaly you'll see in 2026 that makes it higher than every supplemental year is because there is a one-time cost to start up any new officer for any jurisdiction, whether it's an existing agency or a new one. So that cost is rolled out as 9 months of the first step of a deputy's salary and benefits only, none of the other overhead costs in and of itself, because that is about the rough time and salary costs to hire a deputy, get them trained through the academy, and get them through field training. And so everyone incurs that cost for every new officer that they bring on board. So that's listed in 2026. And that's why you see those numbers higher than the subsequent years. And so taking the estimates all the way out to 2030, you'll see the numbers again on the left with a 4% inflator and on the right with a 6% inflator. And then I turned it off. And then if we, this concludes our presentation, but we want to take a moment to address a few additional items for you.
So one thing I want to bring up is you've probably heard in the media that we are facing a $30.2 million shortfall. I want to emphasize that is for the unincorporated parts of the county. So as a contract, as a customer, your positions would be revenue backed. So that those cuts would not, they don't apply to our customers. They apply to the unincorporated parts of the county that we have to fund with the general fund. So I think that's important to note.
All right. So pending your questions, that actually concludes our presentation. Just wanted to highlight that photo that's up there. Actually, that was taken a little over 2 years ago for a recruiting campaign that we had out there. And so it just happened to be right in front of Mount Si. So it's not like we just went out there yesterday and took it. So that existed in recruiting materials years ago. Thank you very much.
Right on the button. So we have decided that we will sort of go around the circle. We'll start with our most senior council member, and everyone will get a turn. Last time, every council member got an opportunity to ask 2 questions. That largely depends on how long your answers are. I'd recommend you try and keep questions and answers to 2 to 5 minutes. We'll start with Councilmember Elwood.
Thank you. And I've reorganized my cables so I don't spill everything off my desk again. Thank you, Sheriff Cole-Tyndale, for being here. It means a lot to see your presence here, and the fact that you opened up with the importance and significance of it, of building relationships, and relationships matter. And your personal promise to build that trust is definitely meaningful, specifically to us as a panel, but specifically to me. I do have a question, and it's a similar question. I'll word it differently, though, that I asked of Snoqualmie, which is when we're thinking about the contracted chief is serving essentially 2 leadership chains, right? We have yourself and then our city council here. How does that dynamic work insofar as what autonomy, what control do we have? If, for example, and I'm going on an extreme one here, you say, okay, I need every deputy to issue $1,500 or 1,500 tickets a month or make so many arrests, quotas, however that dynamic works. Does that roll down into our community as well? Do we have some sort of control there?
Thank you for that question. So let me try to answer it this way. So King County Sheriff's Office, very large agency. So how we have to give direction to our deputies is we cannot have different types of service throughout the county, because one day our deputy might be working here, they might go work overtime up in Shoreline, and if it was different in each place that they worked, it would be very impossible for them to do what they needed to do. Now, in terms of local control, what you do have control over is, do you want your deputies to focus on traffic and your officers and write tickets? But when we talk about overall philosophy and law, legal authority, those types of things, that needs to come from the sheriff's office. And that's what you're buying. You're buying police service. You're also buying risk, right? So if there's a shooting, it's not the city that's going to absorb that. It will be the sheriff's office. So in terms of how we allocate our resources, you would have your 12, and basically the chief would decide how he deploys those in the city. But when it comes to let's use an example, a real example, City of Burien, right? With how we handle the unhoused. Well, the sheriff's office, in conjunction with the executive's office, have a philosophy on how we deal with unhoused people. We're not going to arrest them. And so that is a real life example where we had an issue with that city on how we were going to deal with unhoused people. So I give the direction to the deputies, order them not to do a certain thing, but you will have some local control if you want to emphasis on traffic or say there's something you want your officers to do specifically, but overarching, more broad things, that does come from the sheriff's office.
Thank you for that answer. And just in transparency, my questioning came out of my residence in Maricopa County under Sheriff Joe Arpaio's tenure for quite some time. So I've had a lot of relationship with the sheriff and the residents dynamic. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Colon.
Yes, thank you for your presentation and thank you for all of you coming here. I really liked a lot of things you said, data-driven, community healing, the open data dashboard, annual report. My question is, we have a lot of residents that have lived in North Bend for a long time. And when we previously contracted with the sheriff, they complained about call times. So they're still remembering that and very concerned about it. How would you address that concern?
So I wasn't here at the time, but my understanding is the previous contract model that North Bend had was a flex patrol model, which utilized unincorporated deputies to come into the city, and they would try to emphasize certain amount of times and call loads. But ultimately, it was a shared service with the unincorporated area and with the city. What this model does, it flips that dynamic around and turns it into dedicated staff that are always in the city. Dedicated staff that you actually see and you'll remember what their names are versus I don't know which deputy is going to be patrolling my city today. And that's the nice luxury of having a dedicated city contract model where your police chief is sitting here with you at every city council meeting. You know who Detective so-and-so is, and the officers that show up at your community events, you know them by name. And that is the benefit of having that specific model. So you don't incur times where you're concerned about the response times, and you have the ability to be able to talk to your contract chief to talk about what are those priorities that you want to shift to ensure that certain calls have certain response times, and what resources do you need to divert to make that happen, where the priority is going to be. And do you have enough resources? Again, data driven. Is 2.0 staffing from 8 to 8 the right model? Or is it too much? Is it too little? And so that's the consistent driver there, that they're going to have the resources from the big headquarters side to be able to support that information, to provide that information back to the contract and to the city, provide the best service that the city is looking for.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'll reiterate how pleased we are and appreciative that you took the time to come be with us. You might decide that this question should be answered by someone else, but as we sit here trying to decide what we're after is the best available information, you are, of course, in relationship with the Snoqualmie Police Department because you provide, I have, this page with this whole raft of incredible access to services from the communication center, major crimes, K9, bomb disposal unit, so forth. Any insight you can share with me as a decision maker is how the cost and access to these services changes, whether they're accessed via you as the contractor to the city versus I understand Snoqualmie has access to many of these same services. But I'm unable to discern the difference in impact to the city between how much it costs is going one channel versus the other, or how incorporated or they aren't in the two proposals. And again, as a competitive bidder, so to speak, here, you could defer, but any insight you might offer me, I would appreciate.
Mayor Pro Tem, that is a very good and valid question. I'll answer that from my experience as a former police chief of an independent city of probably similar size and demographics and resident population. So if I were that chief and I requested services from a fellow agency for something I do not have a contract ILA or like services for, that agency can decline. And so if you have a critical incident in your city and you're requesting those services, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people for the sake of money will say no, because we are a profession where we are doers and we will do everything in our power to make sure we go and help those who need the assistance. But there could be a time, and I've experienced it as well, where folks have declined and you're scrambling to find assistance. And that is not a very good feeling to be in when you're in charge of that agency and you're responsible for the protection of every resident in that city. and having to answer to a council just like yourself and to the mayor. Not a comfortable position to be in. And so that's that possibility that exists there. We don't have access to dedicated response that is in that contract agreement in and of itself. Again, it's possible. I'm not saying that's going to be probable all the time. And so that's the risk that you have and you incur when that's out there. I think the fire services will probably tell you the same answer with regards to not having ILAs for similar services as well. Mutual aid exists, but there could be the time where resources are tied up as resources are getting thinner and thinner for other agencies and costs are increasing as well.
Councilmember Tremolata.
Yeah, appreciate you hitting a couple topics head on, knowing that we'd probably think about it. So I did want to touch base on the budget item one more time, understanding that we are revenue based if we're in contract with you, but I guess it's, for lack of a better word, it's hard to believe there wouldn't be an impact to us, right, from the surge response or other support areas. I'm sure this is still fresh at your desk and you're navigating how we do this, but how would you imagine going forward if there are any level of reductions to, neighboring areas in Falls City or other or unincorporated North Bend, where if we had an incident, God forbid, something as like a Lake Alice or something, how can we assure our residents that yes, we have the two deputies that are in our contract, but we're also going to have resources as needed for a high level call?
Thank you for that question. So currently with the 30.2 we might face, what I would have to do is cut vacancies. There's no bodies being cut. And what that means to contracts is we would take those resources from unincorporated and fill our contracts. So I can tell you that if there is some major incident, people will come lights and sirens from all over the county. Anybody who is attached to us, they're coming. So you would have your dedicated resources plus. So I do not see any of our revenue back customers losing service. In fact, their level of service is going to be better than it is now because many of them have vacancies. We will be able to fill those vacancies because we have bodies in Uncorp that will have to find a spot for. So you'd have your dedicated plus more coming.
And online, we have Councilmember Rustick.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. My question, some of them you've answered already, so I do appreciate that. My question, I'm the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee, and so as such, we have established a good working relationship with our police force, which helps communicate out to residents on some of the situations that are going on. In addition, our city staff communicates out quite a few of those significant incidents, and because the public wants to know. So my question is, what is your process for ensuring that communication channel meets the city of North Bend's needs?
Well, thank you for the question. I can speak to that because our communication falls up under our division. First and foremost, we're going to look to the contract city chief to their preferred method, and they're going to be tied into likely local social media and other channels to make sure the priority events are messaged out. In addition, there's going to be a network behind the scenes that offers complete 24/7 media updates. So if you have a significant event, it will be messaged. We're going to do that through the appropriate channels as we do for all of our other contract partners. But we already have a robust network built to serve our contracts, and we'll use those same resources to serve North Bend. We're pretty good at identifying which events really matter to a city, and we know none of our contract partners are the same. There'll be certain sensitivities, certain areas, and we're going to make sure that we're responsive to that and tailor that communications and media to North Bend.
I could add on to that. What we try to emphasize with our contracts is it's your jurisdiction. You take direction from the chief executive officer from that jurisdiction on how that information is processed, how it's delivered. And if there's an internal preference that it come through city channels, absolutely, that's your message to deliver. If you and your resources are so overwhelmed that you can't handle that, that's when we're able to hop in with our team from the sheriff's office to support that that contract if they need help with the messaging, if they need help with the media relations to fully support that. And it, as a communicator myself, that is absolutely incredible during a critical incident to take that load off of your city where you may be inundated with dealing with the incident and to allow us to support from our end.
Councilmember Torgerson.
Yay, my turn. First of all, thanks for coming, and we really appreciate Sheriff Patty being here. It's awesome. One of my questions, I have so many questions, but unfortunately we're limited. King County is anticipating a significant budget cuts, and residents in the unincorporated areas are, which border North Bend, are already kind of reporting kind of a decline in service. So my question is, how do you anticipate these budget cuts will anticipate service delivery, especially in neighboring unincorporated areas? And what safeguards will be in place to ensure North Bend's dedicated officers are not pulled away to meet outside city limits needs all the time? Like, are we going to be getting a reduced service because we're having to support unincorporated King County?
So being the precinct commander, one of my roles here is more the functional and practical. How do things actually work once things are in place? So to answer your specific question, we recently were tasked with the unincorporated area in reducing minimum staffing levels. That doesn't mean it'll be at that level. We have overlapping shifts and not everyone takes the same time off. So oftentimes we have above that. I use data to drive how I'm going to staff the unincorporated area, including out here and down to Fall City. So what we looked at is from midnight to 0600, calls in our unincorporated area just drop off. They just absolutely drop off. So we're running a little bit skinnier then, but then all of our higher calls for service and more activity, we're running with larger staffing. So instead of doing an even amount of people across each hour of the day, we're doing that. And like any other flexible organization, that's been implemented by the end of this month or towards the end of this month. We are going to touch bases with our sergeants who are out there 24 hours and say, is this working? Right? And we'll compare it with the data. And if we have to shift or adjust, we're going to do that. So we're using sort of a living model right now to figure out how we can keep our response times down, how we can keep officer safety up, all those things. So that's what I'm doing as the precinct commander. It ultimately falls on me for making those decisions. And that's the route I decided to take, use data as a starting point, and then touch bases with the people that are actually doing the work and any other sources of information to find out, can we adjust it and make it better?
But if I could add the question about your dedicated resources, you will have those dedicated resources. If there is some major incident, of course, we would have to ask those people to go, right? But that is rare, right? That doesn't happen that often. So you've got city officers, they are assigned to your city. It is only in an extreme situation would they have to be called to assist.
Thank you. Great.
Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. I really enjoyed your presentation. Especially nice to meet you, Sheriff Patty. Thank you for all that you all do. Most of my questions have been answered. Thank you for that. So I'm going to go a little slightly different direction. I was looking at your FTEs and I didn't happen to see if you have, well, if Chief would have an administrative assistant, and if he or she does, is that cost included in the contract?
As the model set up right now, there is no administrative specialist that is dedicated in the model itself. That is something you can add on later. Unlike commission deputies that take a while to ramp up, that's something you can add on at a future time if you see the workload is necessary for the chief to have administrative assistant for whatever the functions are. And that can be done in different portions. It doesn't have to be a full 1.0 or it could be a 0.5, but I think that's probably something we can come back to in a check and adjust.
Thank you for that.
We're at 17 minutes, so let's go around the horn again.
Thank you. And yes, echoing my colleagues' sentiments that came in and preemptively answered a lot of my questions, which is awesome, specifically around budgeting and so forth. So when talking with some former leaders of the community here, our former mayor, in fact, we were discussing some things that had to deal with response times, which you've addressed with our dedicated team. And that's been also the concerns that I've heard with other individuals. Given that the precinct for our area is in Sammamish, historically, what was causing a delay in response times was it was the flex model that you described, but also having the officer protocol and checking in between shifts and so forth that took officers off the street because they physically had to go to some other destination. Is that model still in play with this? Because I don't think we have a dedicated, station or facility just yet.
So the sheriff's office is unique in that we are entirely mobile. Our officers are issued take-home vehicles. We have our own cell phone hotspots and our own computers in our car. Even I, because of the size of the precinct, for example, I'll go out and meet the city manager in Carnation. I have the same setup in my unmarked car because maybe I'll pull down to the park by the river and work there. So there is no requirement to go to the station at the start of shift anymore. It hasn't been that way for a very long time. When we do go to the station, there's certain required things like evidence. We have to maintain a chain of custody for evidence. And so there's only so many places we have the right secure place to input it. So there's certain things that they do go to the precinct, but we don't do it at the start of shift. They go right to their patrol districts. In this case, it'd be right to the city of North Bend as they're driving into work.
Where am I? Councilmember Cullen.
Yeah. So what do you know about North Bend and what do you feel like are the key challenges facing North Bend today and in the next 5 years?
I worked North Bend way back in the day when we had it as a contract. I've seen it grow and I've worked at this precinct on multiple occasions. I will say that observations are just like everything I said. You have a burgeoning resident population that loves living out here under Mount Si and all the mountains. It's easy access to recreation, not only for people outside the city, but people who live in the city. As you go through the downtown area, myself and the chief here, when we've been out here, we go to your local restaurants. So there's a draw here. And then based on the earlier information we got from the city, we understand the city, at least population wise, is going to grow. So anytime there's a concentration of people or inflow and outflow of people, people will do people things, right? They could be doing normal legal activity, shopping at the outlet mall, or they could be shoplifting at the outlet mall, right? So I foresee the growth of the city being this great place to live, work, and visit with a higher concentration of people. I can already tell you right now, probably traffic is probably an issue, both from the engineering side as well as safety side and enforcement. We get that in almost every single one of our cities. That's usually one of the top 1 or 2 priorities. When it comes to crime, my recollection is it's a relatively low crime community. I see community engagement being a big thing, having that touch with our officers should they be working here in the city of North Bend. I have that expectation. I have 4 cities right now under my precinct umbrella. My verbiage, I treat them as semi-autonomous regions, where day to day they are interacting and fulfilling the mission of the city as the head of public safety. That is the number 1 mission for them. If they need help from me, guidance, whatever, I help. If there's larger sheriff's office resources, we can always draw those in. So yeah, the city is growing, and with growth sometimes comes some problems, but if we stay ahead of it, identify it, leverage data, we can really work synonymously with the city to achieve not only crime reduction and all those things that law enforcement does, but also be a force multiplier to the rest of the departments and the vision, mission, goals of the city. That's how I currently operate with the other cities. Those chiefs are chiefs. They report to their city managers, their councils, their strong mayors. That's what they do day in and day out. And I expect that of them. I also expect them to just keep me informed and see where I can help out.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Yes, we live in an interesting geography as we've experienced tonight with the persistent rains. I look at this map and I see where you are providing service, and we're out here, as we know, to the east. in that context, what synergies and what challenges do you see in this new partnership were it to come into existence? And how might those things benefit the citizens who live here?
I'll go back to the functional level. The synergies are, first off, anyone selected to the city of North Bend, which especially your chief, you're going to be actively involved in. I'll use a recent example. City of Shoreline selected a chief out of our personnel, and they used a process that was as good as or even better than an independent city selecting a chief of police. There was something like 6 different things that they had to go through, experience, and be exposed to. Community, council, department heads, all the things. So start your initial leadership and who you select will set the tone. And we put a lot on the city, and we help, but we put a lot on the city to have that empowerment to select the right person for their community. So that's the key number one. Out of that, we have a huge workforce of a variety of experiences to draw from. I personally have worked in 6 contracts in a bunch of unincorporated area, and I started at Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I am one of many that comes with the ability to leverage a huge amount of law enforcement, professional experience. And so that whole body is what you get to select from, and that chief that you select gets to select from to populate your workforce. Believe it or not, the majority of the deputies that work in my precinct, and I've worked all over the county, really like this area, really likes the communities in the area. And so leverage points, you have a pot of experience to start up this police function. And we can help you be successful at that.
Councilmember Tremolata.
How do your contract cities, well, as well as the unincorporated, but how your contract cities work together at all during the year or during various policing, right? Like, in other words, we would want to engage, it's interesting to have the decision-making ability with the chief and ongoing kind of decision-making on how we patrol our city. But I think best practices is always part of our work here at council. And how do we get in information trade? Is there oversight? Is there any sort of meeting of the minds on any annual basis, whether it's through Precinct 2 or others, to find out what is Sammamish doing that maybe we want to incorporate in North Bend that we're not thinking of, and vice versa?
Councilmember, I think you touched on that, the key word there, oversight. So there is a group that consists of all the city managers, chief executives of all of our contract cities, and it meets every other month. It's called the Oversight Committee, and they have the ability to make to have discussions and to have input into policy decisions, have input into protocol procedures, get insight into the why of why things are working, why our policies are drafted up in the manner that they are, and also to have insight into finances, future finances, because that's always a thing that we need to get done before budget season. And so all the city managers and mayors have the ability to connect with each other and to connect with us and all the key leaders in the sheriff's office in regards to concerns, questions, and trends that are going on, and to try to stay ahead of those. So you're not sitting there wondering, what are we going to do about whatever that new issue is that's piping up? So everyone is all on the same page and ahead of that.
Great. Thank you.
I would like to add. So your chief will be part of multiple groups within the sheriff's office. We have regular leadership team meetings. We also have contract city chief meetings, and that's within the sheriff's office. Then in this area, your chief would be expected to be part of the East Side Chiefs group. We just had a meeting the other day where the east side of basically Lake Washington, curving around all the way to Shoreline, we get together once a month. So you have not only, you run the risk if you do things just internal to your organization of only thinking a certain way. So this allows us at least region specific for that chief to cull information. And that's all we do at Eastside Chiefs. We just do a roundtable. What are you working on? What problems are you having? Do you have any crime trends? What technology? So we already do that. And at slightly larger regional level, there's the King County Chiefs Association. So all King County chiefs go to that as well. So there's multiple layers to make sure that you maintain the feel of North Bend, but you have a very progressive chief of police and police force.
Councilmember Restic.
Yes, thank you. This probably kind of tags on to what the answer you just gave. So the laws across King County are consistent, but perhaps some of them are decisions on how you would execute them. For example, the decision to chase a criminal at the time when school is in session, you may choose not to. So my question is, how do you understand North Bend and all of its different school systems and the different roads to be able to apply some of those standardized laws across the county? Thank you.
I'm going to start and then I'll turn it over to the major. So we have a very robust policy manual. It's so large, we don't print it. It's online, plus it's a living document. It changes. So we have policy that speaks to when it is appropriate to pursue and when not to pursue. And most of our policy is based on model policy set from the state. So we are very much in compliance with that. Now, and to your specific question about the city of North Bend, I'll turn it over.
So North Bend has certain times of day has high volume of traffic. What I would say is to piggyback on the sheriff's comments, our emergency vehicle operations training program is very robust. Everyone has to go through high performance driving training, accident avoidance, all that kind of stuff once every 2 years. We also have a huge policy, but what's also interesting is that no officer gets sanctioned if they're going into a situation that appears to be dangerous, a school zone, schools getting out, whatever. They can cancel the pursuit right then so that we're not being part of the cause of a potential car versus pedestrian or anything like that. Conversely, our manual is robust and has enough guidelines that, yes, they can pursue under certain situations. On top of that, we do pursuit reviews. So what happens if someone gets in a pursuit, they just don't turn the lights off and, hey, I didn't get him or I got him. Everything is documented and it goes through multiple layers of review. So it starts with a sergeant going out and getting with that deputy. The deputy has to fill out certain information on the pursuit. The supervisor has to review it, and it goes through this software that we have that tracks, captures, and can ultimately be subject to public disclosure. And it goes up through the captain. So right now you already have like 3 layers of scrutiny, and then it goes downtown to a pursuit review board that does reviews of those things to make sure that it was in compliance or not in compliance. And so if it's not in compliance, it can range from counseling to just retraining or something like that. We don't just go through reviews and just let it sit. If it's within policy and it's been reviewed by this panel after the 3 or 4 levels going up, then it'll be shown to be within policy and state law. So just using the pursuit as an example.
We're at 30 minutes, but we have 2 more questioners, so I say we proceed. Okay, Councilmember Torgerson.
Thank you. This is the same question I asked of Snoqualmie, so I think it's only fair I ask of you guys as well. Given North Bend's projected revenue shortfalls in the next 2 years and the absence of a clearly defined strategy to increase our revenue, how would your agency structure or allow flexibility in the contract to ensure that costs can be adjusted if actual revenue falls short of our projections? Examples would be like maybe built-in mechanisms for service level adjustments, phased implementation, mid-contract negotiation options that would prevent a drastic citywide cut in other North Bend departments so we'd have to maintain our police services. In other words, we don't want to cut our staff. Also, can the contract include any sort of like hard cost ceilings to help North Bend manage the budget more predictably and avoid any unanticipated cost escalations year to year?
So I'll start with the projected cost exhibits, basically your projected cost for the following year. That process normally starts in the fall of the year preceding the year that the costs are going to be included into. So say, for example, if you're looking at trying to figure out your 2026 budget in October, you'll get the proposed cost exhibit, which is going to be the cost estimate of what your contract services are going to be for the following year. And then in the following year, after that calendar year, they'll get the actual costs of what the police services were. And so the cities will never pay, cities will pay the lesser of the actual or your proposed. So going into it, you know what your ceiling is going to be for total costs. And then there may be a likelihood that your actual costs may be lower when your actuals get calculated in the following year. If there's an unforeseen circumstance, let's say your calls for service, if you happen to have a year where your number of incidents, the major incidents, are just astronomical for some reason, and it just exceeds your previous years, we smooth out those dispatch call for service numbers, which determine your cost of the pool costs over a 3-year period. So you don't end up seeing a year where you're seeing your costs increase by 50 or 60% because you had a spike in certain levels of violent crimes. And so by being able to average that over 3 years, your cost is a bit more predictable and easier to palate in future budget years. And that's the ongoing discussion that needs to be had throughout the year with oversight and with the contracts team about what are your expectations in the following year for services. If you're projecting potential budget shortfalls, are the service levels going to change in what you have in your contract, increase, decrease, to be projected out prior to the cost estimates being out there? But ultimately, once it starts, then you'll start getting a monthly invoice for your proposed costs, and you may end up getting a credit, more than likely a credit back based when they do the reconciliation in the following budget cycle. So that's how they're able to better project that out. And what the county has done in previous years, when there has been times where there were a large increase because of central service costs, for example, the risk pool cost increased astronomically due to several incidents, they were able to defer millions of dollars in that cost into future years and also average that out over multiple years. So it didn't impact contracts that were dealing with smaller budgets, where their police services budgets usually are the larger chunk of that. So they have ways to mitigate some of those costs.
Thank you.
And our last question of the night.
No pressure. You keep answering all my questions, so thank you again. My last question is about if someone on our community calls in for a non-emergency issue or emergency issue, how long should they expect to be on hold, for example? How does that go?
So I can speak to that. Our non-emergency line, obviously, we call it the 3311 number, goes in through a different call protocol than 911, for example. And that candidly is going to be dependent on time of day, staffing, and other considerations. So I'd hate to give an estimate that isn't correct. I think there's consensus that we want to put life safety call response first. And doing all we can. We do have some other ways that folks can engage with us through CopLogic and other things that can be done at the direction of your city chief in terms of alternative call handling and when and if it's appropriate for your city. But we appreciate that, and we think communities understand we want to prioritize 911, but I'd hate to offer a time that potentially isn't correct to that. But we're aware of it and want to be responsive.
Thank you so much.
I believe that brings us to the end of the proceedings. We appreciate your time and engagement and insight, but I believe there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.